YouTube, today we're going to go over the Mewtwo team I used for Baek battles. Let's get started and roll the episode. So why Mewtwo? Mewtwo is an interesting restricted. I actually put it pretty high in my last tier list back in Series 8, and I think it is a pretty underrated restricted. I think it has a lot of power, even though it is outclassed by Shadow Rider Calyx being faster, having that ghost typing, just being a really strong powerhouse. I think Mewtwo's coverage makes it really good against a lot of the common mons, especially like being able to OHKO a Dynamax Landorus with just Ice Beam itself, being able to do a lot of damage to like Venusaur, Charizard, and a lot of other threats, being able to threaten a lot of Zacians now that are running Adamant. I think it's a perfect mon for this moment in the format when those Pokemon are really common. So I really want to explore Mewtwo, and I had a few ideas with it and decided to try them out. So how was the team formed? Well, it started off with the idea of Mewtwo with a really strong ability to do a lot of damage to the format. Of course, with Landorus Variant, as I mentioned before, as well as outspeeding Adamant Zacians, which are pretty common now. So I thought, okay, I'm going to run this Timid Mewtwo, which does outspeed. I need a way to set up Sun because I need to OHKO the Zacian, and I do need the Sun power boost in order to do that. But I have to also stop Grimmsnarl because at the time when I built this team, Grimmsnarl, Zacian, Sun was pretty much the common thing. So I was like, how do I prevent this? So I thought about it and I thought, ooh, Weezing Neutralizing Gas makes a lot of sense here because I could set up the Sun immediately by leading like my Drought user with Mewtwo, then switching to my Weezing to prevent them from having the Prankster so they can't set up the light screen immediately, and then Mewtwo can just KO the Zacian unexpectedly. So that was my idea here. I started off with Mewtwo, Weezing, and actually I started off with Scarf Ninetales. I originally did have Scarf Ninetales on the team over Torkoal, and I did have Tapu Lele added because I did want the Psychic Terrain, and also another answer to Yveltal, and I thought, oh, Tapu Lele does make a lot of sense here. So I had the Tapu Lele. I actually had a Jetpack Tapu Lele as a fun thing against Incineroars to have the Psychic Terrain up set up for Mewtwo, and then like maybe bring in Nihilego or Weezing and just really be a threat there. But I ended up changing the team because after I found out that Scarf Ninetales, even though it was a cool support Pokemon with Fake Tears, Choice Scarf with the boosting the Mewtwo, I thought was pretty cool. The fact that it didn't KO the Shadow Rider Calyx, which I absolutely needed to with the Shadow Ball or Dark Pulse, was just really disappointing. So I ended up scrapping the Ninetales. I was also a little bit weak to Trick Room, so I was happily fine with scrapping Ninetales, unfortunately. Man, the one time I wanted to use Ninetales and thought it would work, it just couldn't do the job of KOing the Calyx Shadow Rider guaranteed. It's a roll very little chance of getting the KO. So ended up adding Torkoal and then having the Choice Scarf moved up to Tapu Lele. That's how I had those four. Then I ended up adding the Regigigas and the Nihilego, and I had these both at the same time because I thought, okay, Yveltal is really scary, and there's a lot of stuff that's scary with Mewtwo. There's Regieleki or Shifu, which is still a really strong option right there. There's the Calyrex teams. There's a lot of threats to Mewtwo. So I thought Regigigas does cover a lot of stuff, including like bonus points for like a Dynamax Pokemon, because I didn't actually plan on Dynamaxing Mewtwo that much. I thought, you know, I had room for the Dynamax mon, and Regigigas was a pretty cool mon that allows setup, immune to the ghost typing that Mewtwo is weak to, and does pretty well against a lot of the formats. So I thought, you know what, let's try out the Regigigas, and then Nihilego was added because I thought, okay, I can't really hit Incineroar too well. I'm going to have this Nihilego in the back just so I can take on Incineroars better. I also wanted another answer to Charizard and another answer for Grimmsnarl as well. And that is how the 6 was formed. By adding Torkoal, I did want the defensive set too, which was a later adjustment where I had this Iron Defense set to help out with trigger matchups when I replaced the Ninetales later. So that is how the entire team was formed. All right, let's go over the items, the movesets, and the EV spreads of the team. We have Life Orb Mewtwo, of course, with the Unnerve ability, which is actually pretty important on this team, with Expanding Force, Ice Beam, Flamethrower, Protect. The reason you want Life Orb on the Mewtwo, of course, it is important for a lot of damage calculations, especially the Flamethrower and Sun against Zacians. It is really powerful. And of course, the Unnerve ability is actually really important. So if you have pressure, you actually get to find out the speed abilities between the Zacian and Mewtwo, which might be good for your side, but it usually ends up hurting because the Zacian's a little bit more aware of the fact that Mewtwo is going to be faster. So playing that mind game, it might be worth having the Unnerve, and it also really helps with like situational berries, I suppose, and citrus stuff, which can be pretty nice on Mewtwo as well. Expanding Force, of course, for the damage output with the Tapu Lele. I had Side Strike originally when I didn't have Tapu Lele, and I was exploring around a little bit, but I just ended up having Expanding Force because I do have Tapu Lele, and sometimes I would Dynamax Mewtwo, so it was not a bad option at all. Ice Beam, of course, for Landispherian, which is pretty important because you're able to OHKO a Landispherian, which is important for opening up the doors for Nihilego and maybe even Weezing as well, which is pretty nice. Flamethrower for the Zacians, of course, you don't actually have to risk Fire Blast. I thought you did originally, but yeah, you don't actually have to risk Fire Blast, which is really nice. So Flamethrower does OHKO most Zacians that are just max HP, which is really nice. And they have to have quite a bit of special defense to even have a chance of living, which is really good. And then Protect, of course, to preserve the Mewtwo. And then the EV spread is just very simple. You just want max special attack, max speed, of course. You want to be timid, so you outspeed the Adamant Zacians guaranteed. You want the max special attack because it does affect the calcs. And then the leftover went into defense. Next Pokemon we have is Focus Sash Weezing with the Neutralizing Gas with Sludge Bomb, Taunt, Will-O-Wisp, and Protect. This Weezing, of course, for the Neutralizing Gas, I thought it was pretty cool against Grimmsnarls. I didn't have Regigigas on the team, so I thought maybe they would lead Grimmsnarl Zacian, for instance, and I'd be able to pressure them using the Weezing and just shut down any screens, which is really nice. And I think just shutting down a lot of abilities made it really good, especially like Venusaur Chlorophyll, for instance, random Swift Swims that we saw, and of course the Sun is pretty important. So yeah, I really do like Weezing, and I thought it's just a really underrated Pokemon. I absolutely love using it as well. I loved using it back in Series 9, and yeah, it's just a really fun Pokemon. So Focus Sash, of course, because of the fact that there are a lot of threats to Weezing, like the Shadow Rider Calyx, for instance, and yeah, I would run Shucka if it wasn't for like Shadow Rider Calyx being quite common. So I did go with the Focus Sash since I do think it's the most consistent item. You want to preserve Weezing, especially taking those big powerful max moves, for instance. Having the Sludge Bomb, Taunt, Will-O-Wisp, and Protect set is pretty standard. You want Sludge Bomb for the chip damage. You want Taunt and Will-O-Wisp because they're really good supports for like Trick Room stuff. And of course, Will-O-Wisp does help out against a lot of the physical attackers, which really do hurt Mewtwo, such as Zacian, such as the Urshifu, and a bunch of other physical attackers. So just having Will-O-Wisp is nice. And Protect, of course, you want to preserve the Weezing as long as possible for the Regigigas. So the EV spread is quite simple: 252 HP for special attack and 252 speed with a Timid Nature. I think I might have been 244 HP and 4 niche defenses on the actual team that I had, but it's basically the same accomplishment. Basically, you might be wondering, why do you have Focus Sash when you have a max HP Pokemon in this case instead of max special attack? The reason is Weezing doesn't do much damage, and you want to try to survive as many double ups as possible. And it's quite common that Weezing does live some double ups, especially since you want Weezing to be on the field as long as possible. It makes more sense out of the bulk, but you still want the speed. The speed is important for certain situations, like outspeeding Whimsicott at -1 speed, for instance, to get the knockout with Sludge Bomb. Even though I don't have a Pokemon that's faster than Whimsicott, it might be important in a later scenario in the end games, potentially, when Whimsicott might be trying to set a second Tailwind, which is pretty important. And it does allow Weezing to outspeed quite a few threats with the Max Strike with Regigigas to follow up with a Will-O-Wisp. So having the speed is pretty important on the Weezing. And yeah, the Weezing, just fantastic. I think it's a great Pokemon. Neutralizing Gas, such an underrated ability, and it does a lot of work, especially against some teams. I absolutely enjoyed using Weezing again. Next Pokemon we have is the Power of Nihilego with the Beast Boost, Stability, Meteor Beam, Sludge Bomb, Power Gem, and Protect. Really, all I wanted from Nihilego: ways to hit Incineroar for a lot of damage, and another answer to Yveltal, and Power of Nihilego did not disappoint in that factor. Power Up, of course, for the Meteor Beam. Really just insane damage. It really does. Having a +1, and if you do get the KO, you get +2 from one turn, which is absolutely insane. Sludge Bomb's really nice, of course. It does help for the coverage against Grimmsnarls, other fairies like Xerneas potentially, and Power Gem because you do want to back up to hit Charizard in case you don't want to use your Meteor Beam, or if you already used your Meteor Beam prior. And then Protect, of course, to preserve the Nihilego. EV spread's pretty simple, just 4 HP, 252 special attack, 252 speed with a Timid Nature. It's just because you do want to outspeed the Charizards. I don't really have any bulk factors on this team. I do have Wisp on the Weezing to help Nihilego survive attacks, but I just don't think it's really worth it. Just having the max speed, I think, is good enough on the Nihilego. I don't think there's a big reason to like not have the max speed realistically, as I don't think the extra in defense points will matter for the most part. And this is a hyper offensive team, so you're mainly just playing offensively in general. So might as well just go with the max speed. You want the max special attack for the Yveltal calcs with Meteor Beam and Power Gem, and of course Incineroar. And then just having the extra in HP, because why not? Next Pokemon we had Regigigas with the Silk Scarf item with Slow Start for the ability with Giga Impact, High Horsepower, Darkest Lariat, and Thunder Punch. Now, Regigigas was not originally on this team, but since I had Neutralizing Gas on the Weezing, and the fact that Regigigas can be a really strong mon, especially since I didn't really Dynamax Mewtwo as much I decided why not go Regigigas. It's a really strong Dynamax Pokemon and it does do well against a lot of things. You have to prepare for this threat with the Weezing, especially if you rely on your abilities normally to take care of other stuff. So I really do like Regigigas with the Silk Scarf. The reason I have Silk Scarf is because Mewtwo had the Life Orb, and you know, Expert Belt might be a thing on Mewtwo, but the thing is it does change quite a bit of the Flamethrower calcs, which I'm not very comfortable with. I'm not risking the Zacian KO, so I would rather have Life Orb on the Mewtwo and just rather have Silk Scarf on the Regigigas. I feel like usually Regigigas, the only thing it will miss out is maybe a few knockouts with Giga Impact, which do tend to be significant. I have noticed that throughout. And of course, the high horsepower potentially on stuff like Zacian, for instance. But I think usually I would be trying to go with Mewtwo and Torkoal to take care of the Zacians anyway. So I don't think that was as important, but definitely I did notice the Giga Impacts were missing some knockouts. So maybe it's something that could be adjusted in the future, or maybe I could run Fire Blast on a Mewtwo with Expert Bell. Definitely potential options to consider. But I think overall, I think Silk Scarf was fine for the purpose here. I don't really miss the Life Orb, and it kind of made the Regigigas a little bit bulkier, so it was still actually pretty nice. So the moveset was Giga Impact, High Horsepower, Darkest Lariat, and Thunder Punch. Giga Impact, of course, you want for the speed control, the strongest normal type move for Regigigas, really good. High horsepower you want for the max quake boost, as well as hitting stuff like the Zacians, for instance. Darkest Lariat you want for the Shadow Rider Calyxes and any other ghost types that really are threatening to Mewtwo. And then the last move, I debated about this quite a bit. I thought about like Ice Punch, I thought about like some other stuff, but since I was trying to deal with like a lot of the Sun teams, like I thought like the best answer to like leading against the Regigigas Weezing is like trying to yawn with Torkoal. So I had that Thunder Punch idea so I could prevent the yawn straight away, but then I kind of realized that I could just taunt with the Weezing. So I don't think the Thunder Punch is really worth it now, looking back at retrospect. It doesn't really do anything other than that electric terrain summon, but I just realized later I could just taunt with the Weezing against, unless I guess they lead like Venusaur and Torkoal and just like try to sack one of the Pokemon to get a Sleep Powder yawn situation off, which I guess is possible if it's like Sash on the Venusaur. But I think overall I don't think the Thunder Punch was really worth it. I'd rather have had like Protect, or maybe I think Protect would have been the best move on Regigigas, because there are definitely some setups I could have done with the Regigigas where I had Regigigas Weezing and I want to Protect turn one, so that definitely could have been a thing. Or maybe even Ice Punch, even because sometimes I did face off against the Landers, but I feel like Protect would have definitely been the move choice I would have wanted. And yeah, so the EV spread is very simple. You, of course, I do want to speed tie like against Charizard, which is a pretty big threat to the Weezing. It's probably one of the scariest mons to deal with against the Sun team, so I do want to be max speed to at least have a chance to speed tie them. I would want to also outspeed their Shifu, of course, which is a really big factor. I do want to max attack because it does affect the calcs, and Regigigas is already pretty bulky by its base stats, and then just have the extra in HP. So really just a really big powerhouse. It does a lot of damage, and yeah, it just hits really hard with the neutralizing gas, negating the slow start. Next Pokemon we have is the Choice Scarf Tapu Lele with the Psychic Surge ability with Psychic, Moonblast, Shadow Ball, and Scale Swap. This Pokemon I didn't originally have on the team. I added it down the road, and yeah, it went through some changes. I did have a Jetpack as an idea on Tapu Lele because I did have a Choice Scarf, cancel Ninetales with Fake Tears, but I did change it, so I had the Choice Scarf option, and I wanted the Choice Scarf Tapu Lele because I thought two things. One, I could actually outspeed Regigigas and get the skill swap off, and B, Okoing Shadow Rider Calyx Shadow Ball I felt like was pretty important since I was replacing the Ninetales with Torkoal. So yeah, I ended up having the Choice Scarf Tapu Lele for that reason, having the Psychic Surge to help with the Mewtwo, and of course being able to hit Yveltal, which is really nice there. So having the Psychic, Moonblast, Shadow Ball, and Skill Swap for coverage, as I mentioned before. Psychic and Moonblast, just big powerful hits. Shadow Ball for the Shadow Rider Calyx, and Skill Swap just for a Regigigas position, which doesn't work against the Dynamax. If the Regigigas is Dynamax, unfortunately, you have to either get it off before Regigigas Dynamax or sometimes afterward, which I did go for a few times, but it's just unfortunate that Skill Swap doesn't work on the Regigigas. I was pretty sad when I remembered that fact, but yeah, that is pretty unfortunate. But the EV spread is just very simple, of course. Timid max speed because you do want to outspeed Shadow Rider Calyx, and I thought like, you know, what am I really adding bulk to? I don't have Intimidate. I have Wisp, I guess, but like I'm still going down to most of the things anyway. I might as well just put it into Special Attack, put it into Speed 4 HP. It is a hyper offensive team, so might as well just get out as much damage as I can with Tapu Lele, and that's what it really did. Last Pokemon is the Leftovers Torkoal set with Drought for the ability with Burning Jealousy, Body Press, Iron Defense, and Protect. Now, I did have a Choice Scarf Ninetales, as I mentioned before, with Fake Tears, and then I dumped it when it couldn't KO Shadow Rider Calyx with the Scarf Modest Max Special Attack. So ended up having Torkoal. It did fulfill an interesting role. The dynamic between Torkoal and Ninetales is actually interesting because if I'm facing opposing weather, for instance, like rain, Ninetales would be able to usually outspeed most of the field, would be able to switch into the Weezing, for instance, which would be really nice. And then if they try switching the rain user, they don't get the rain user or the drizzle to activate, which was pretty nice. But Torkoal, it actually can be awkward because of the fact it usually switches out last, so that's a little dynamic that kind of hurt sometimes, but it was really rare unless I was facing a rain team specifically with the specific swim user. But yeah, that was a thing. And then having the leftovers Torkoal, the reason I went with the bulky Torkoal set is because my trigger matchup was still annoying. I felt like I was struggling against like the NDD Calyx Ice Riders, and I felt, okay, this is a little bit annoying. So what set can I run on Torkoal, since I'm not really planning on running on offensive Torkoal because it's not really that great. Maybe I could have went Specs. I think Specs might have actually been a better option, but I felt like, you know, if I go Specs, I'm still kind of weak to Incineroar after all, and sometimes I'll just have a Torkoal out there when there's no Trick Room out. So I felt I would just try the leftovers variant. I think Specs could actually be a argument still. I don't think Specs is that bad of an option on the Torkoal, and definitely could be explored. It also really punishes players who do go for Trick Room against this team, because the Specs Torkoal does really well against a lot of majority Sun teams. So that might be an option to actually consider in the future. But I felt like, you know, I've tried this defensive Torkoal set before and it's actually pretty good, I feel like. So yeah, that's what I ended up going for. It helps against Zacian, so I could switch it into it. And yeah, that's a pretty nice thing. Just setting free iron defenses against a lot of the passive Zacians as they try to get Incineroar and stuff. And I like getting the iron defense up and then threatening the Incineroar, for instance. It also helps threaten P2, which is also really nice as well. I really do like having the iron defense Torkoal set. That's why I like the Burn Jealousy, Body Press, Iron Defense, and Protect. And yeah, Burn Jealousy. It's weird because I don't really like solo Burning Jealousy as a fire type coverage because you only have 8 power points and you could get stalled out and then you can't hit the Zacian. So I'm not a big fan of it, but I felt like I didn't need Heat Wave and I wasn't really getting any KOs with the Torkoal anyway. So I wanted it as a way to punish some stuff like Shadow Sneaks and Weakness Policies and all that. So I thought Burn Jealousy was the best case in this specific set for what I needed it to do. Body Press, Iron Defense, of course, to help against Incineroar. It's also quite frequent that I go for Iron Defense and Body Press. So I really do like it on this team. And then Protect, of course, to help preserve the Torkoal and get a bit of leftovers recovery. The EV spread is pretty simple, as I did use this pretty similar to my rank 1 team back in like series 5. I just like having the max HP to maximize the leftovers recovery. I do like the bulk on the Torkoal. I added a bit more because of the fact that I feel like I'm not really using much of the special attacks, so might as well just invest extra into the bulk and the defenses and the special defense. It gives me an extra stat point, and yeah, I just really like this Torkoal set. It just ends up doing well. It's able to take hits pretty well and just, you know, go for iron defense and then go for big body presses. And it's really nice, again, specifically to help out of the Sun for Mewtwo, and being able to help out against Incineroar is just a huge plus, which Ninetales was not able to do, which was really nice. So how to use the team and what are the common leads with the team? Well, it's mainly setting up for Mewtwo generally, using Neutralizing Gas and setting up the abilities to help prepare the Mewtwo. And it's a really powerful hyper offensive team where you can shut down a lot of your opponent's strategies because of Neutralizing Gas and dish out a lot of damage using Regigigas, Mewtwo, and a bunch of other combinations. So what are the common leads with the team? I'd say Regigigas plus Weezing is one of them, of course. A really strong lead against teams that really rely on their abilities. Being able to dish out a lot of damage with Regigigas while playing mind games with the Weezing, as Weezing will be acting as a support, is really nice, of course. And you do have Tapu as a backup with Skill Swap. The only thing I will warn is Skill Swap does not work against Dynamax Pokemon, which I found out later. I did sometimes Skill Swap the Regigigas, but that was usually at the beginning against teams that didn't have Intimidate, so I could actually utilize that and save Weezing in the back potentially for later. But yes, that was a little bit of a concern, or I would be able to get Skill Swap off after the Dynamax, but that is something to be aware of if you are planning on Tapu Lele as a backup strategy. Of course, I did like leading Mewtwo Tapu Lele as well. Mewtwo Tapu Lele is a really strong lead if they don't have really good Psychic switch-ins, which would be surprising with Incineroar being very common, but it is a pretty strong lead if you do want to open up and just try to dish out as much damage as possible. Nihilego is pretty good against with one of the Psychic types because of the fact that Nihilego does threaten quite a bit of the format, especially the Incineroars where you could threaten a Meteor Beam KO, and Tapu Lele just able to dish out a lot of damage, or Mewtwo able to threaten stuff like Landorus, which does stand in Nihilego's way. And then I'd say another common lead, Mewtwo plus Torkoal is really solid, of course. As I mentioned before, getting up the Sun with the Torkoal immediately for the Flamethrower. Mewtwo being able to OHKO these Zacians. I did lead this quite a bit. It is probably one of my most common leads other than Regigigas Weezing. And I also sometimes lead Mewtwo plus Weezing as a decent support option. And then finally, I'd say I would lead sometimes the Torkoal and Weezing in a bit more passive situations, or sometimes like Nihilego Torkoal. And that's usually just like depending on the Trick Room matchup. That's usually what I would bring against like Sun Trick Room, but it really just depends once again on that matchup. But that matchup is quite difficult, and usually you have to like try to set up Iron Defense Torkoal, which can do really well against like the Calyrex Ice Rider, and then you try to clear everything else using your other Pokemon like Regigigas or Mewtwo, for instance. And that is the end of the episode. I hope you all enjoyed the thought process of what went behind the Mewtwo team. It definitely can be improved quite a bit, but I really did have a lot of fun with Mewtwo. I think it's a really tough restricted, but it is so rewarding if you're able to make a great team with it. And this team might not have been the best, but I think there were a lot of fun moments with this Mewtwo, and I think it is still a really strong restricted Pokemon. And I do have a few ideas in the future about using Mewtwo and how like it could be improved. So I'm really looking forward to trying out more Mewtwo in the future. But if you did enjoy this episode, make sure you leave a like down below, leave a comment down below. It really does help me out. And try out the team. You have 2 weeks to grab the team with the rental code before it expires. It's been available in the description down below as always. But thank you all for tuning in. Have a great day, people, and until we bow again, I'll catch y'all later.